So these three chemicals that we're looking at, specifically folic acid, glutamate, dextrin, folic acid is found in anything with flour. So
at least here in the U.S.
In the U.S., that's right.
Yeah.
We tend to look for gluten-free products when we're out and about and shopping, because oftentimes they won't, most of the time, they won't have it enriched with folic acid. Cereals are a big one. Even rice and corn cereals will be enriched with folic acid, even though there was no folic acid lost in the first place. They have no business putting it back in. So, but still, it's a problem. For glutamate, flavored products like chips, sauces, meats, and broths. So the meats and broths will naturally have MSG that you need to look for.
Well, free glutamate.
Oh, that's right. Free glutamate.
Yeah.
Chips and sauces, the ottoman, the powdery stuff on the chips like Doritos, that gives that delicious flavor and stimulates the brain.
I don't think I've ever found any flavored chips that don't have some form of glutamate.
They've got glutamate and sometimes specifically MSG added right on top of that chip. So the plainer the chip, the better. You still have to look very carefully for ingredients. We're going to show you a huge list of ingredients that will blow your mind where they hide, where these chemicals hide. Okay, then dextrin, and sometimes it's called maltodextrin. This is a sweetener added to candies, puddings, yogurts, instant hot chocolate. I don't know if it's as bad in other countries with dextrin, but it's in so many of our foods. So especially convenience foods, frozen foods, fast foods. We go to restaurants and oftentimes we ask about these chemicals and they have no idea what's in there. And so we just stay away. If they don't know what's in it, we're not going to eat it. And we'll give you some other rules to live by as well. So here is the huge list.
So
where they hide.
And without going through all of this is just more to show you that it can hide under an enormous number of names. This was something that took me months, and they're still actually expanding this list. We are finding new ways for them to use it because people are kind of on the lookout now. You'll actually have labeling which says no MSG. They'll literally write it like no MSG. Yet if you look down, you'll find that it has yeast extract. Well, that's what MSG is. Yeast extract is MSG. So they found ways around being able to label it because a lot of places now say, look, you need to show whether there's MSG in it, because for some people it can cause, various allergic reactions or other things like that. We found that free glutamate causes inflammation, not only in the gut, but also in the brain. There's been a lot of studies saying, no, it doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier. Well, it doesn't have to. There's nerves in your intestines that it can actually cause neurons to fire in your brain. And so just by having it in your digestive system, it can cause overexcitability in your brain chemistry. And that was something we also started finding in our daughter, that glutamate set her off. Actually, our youngest son is the most sensitive to it. He is such a stalwart with anything. He won't even eat it if there's a question of having some free glutamate. Now, it's not all, this is something that people add to. Sometimes it's a natural product of the food. For example, Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese has about 17% free glutamate just because it's how the bacteria break the protein down of the milk. And it creates, that's really where you get that umami flavor of Parmesan cheese is the glutamate. And a lot of people like that. They like the bite of the cheese and all of that, but this is a source of natural free glutamate. And I have to avoid it like the plague. It makes me crazy more than anything else. And so there's a lot of, this is one of those things that we've stopped trying to tell people to learn this list. In fact, Amanda has created a short list to kind of help with some key words that you can look for on the ingredients label.
Yeah, and you may want to print out this whole list and keep it on your fridge, take it with you shopping. We refer to it often just because the list is so long. We cannot memorize this. James probably has a memory.
I do.
Because he goes over it all the time. And we would love to create an app that you can just scan the ingredient list and it will highlight in red all the chemicals that are bad for you. But I've created this short list on the right. I did not put that in the document yet, so I will send Holly an updated version of this one. But the short list really helps because you're looking for specific keywords like yeast. If there's like autolyzed yeast or yeast food or yeast nutrient, yeast on its own is just fine.
If it says commercial yeast, it's fine.
If it's commercial yeast, if it's just the plain yeast used to rise bread. So if you have yeast at home, keep using it. That's totally fine. It's the process that they use to break down this yeast is what creates
the yeast used to break down the product.
Oh, it's the yeast that's used to break down the product. Okay, yeah. So it's yeast combined with some other product that creates the glutamate problem. Hydrolyzed anything that needs to be avoided. Modified anything needs to be avoided.
Most common, you'll see it say modified food starch. That's kind of the blanket term.
Modified food starch, modified cornstarch as well. Cornstarch on its own is fine, but when it's modified, stay away. Anything isolate and anything syrup. So we found some quote organic treats at Costco. We love Costco for their organic, but we found one product that had quote organic brown rice syrup. We thought it was fine. Our kids were reacting to it. This is usually how we find these chemicals, yeah. Is our kids react to it. And we go back, research every chemical and go, oh, this is not okay. This one's causing the inflammation on the brain. So syrups, it sounds great. It's not. And again, they keep adding to this list as people catch on to the old names. They add new names and trick us up. It's just so frustrating. So I've created 2 rules of thumb. Stay away from foods that have more than 5 ingredients. It'll usually have some kind of horrible chemical listed hidden in those ingredient lists. The other, so is if you can't identify it in your cupboard, stay away from it. So for example, if you had a recipe and it said one of the ingredients is artificial flavor. What is that?
Right.
Could you find that specific ingredient in your cupboard?
Okay.
And know exactly what they're talking? You don't know what they're talking about because artificial flavor is hiding who knows how many different chemicals. And they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to hide these different items in there. What about spices? What if you were making curry and then it just says your next ingredient is spices? Yeah. Well, does that mean turmeric or does that mean oregano? So it's so vague. Stay away from those vague blanket ingredient names. That's what I'm trying to say.
Now here's one where we found this and it basically has what we would call the evil 3. This is basically top ramen. And we just circled a couple of things. You have the enriched flour. Notice they don't write out what they enriched it with. Sometimes they don't have to, so they'll just say enriched. But usually that's a key word. Enriched will mean folic acid. It'll be like 5 different vitamins and one of them is folic acid. Here's one of those where we said autolyzed yeast extract. That's basically MSG. And then there's maltodextrin. So it's got all 3 in this one thing. We just wanted to show an example of how, sometimes you're going to get all 3, sometimes you get 1 or 2, and it's very hard not to get any. I've had to become well, we didn't even realize, look, hydrolyzed soy protein right here too. Yeah, there's more. Well, natural flavor, that's also one, that's a blanket statement.